One concert pianist once complained, "When I play a recital with just a couple of wrong notes, newspapers immediately write what a bloody catastrophe it was, and that I am out of shape. But when Rubenstein performs, he throws handfuls of wrong notes into the audience, and people still admire him." In this video, I will offer you my brief analysis of the technique and style of one of the most charismatic artists of the 20th century, Arthur Rubinstein.
I was present in Lodz, in my birth town, to a pogrom which the Russian Cossacks had made in the street, to run away from Cossacks who beat up the population and make them bleed and so on. We saw blood on the thing. We were terrified, absolutely. And I learned something, that I must build up in me courage. I try to be courageous, not to be afraid of anything. I'm not afraid of anything. I was never really afraid of anything at all.
Arthur Rubinstein is unarguably one of the most musically gifted individuals. He could learn most pieces by just reading them a few times, and he had, as he said, an innate virtuosity, and this is an important point for later. However, due to his incredible temperament and what we may call a very extroverted character, he said he would always prefer a good party over boring piano practice.
J'avais à gauche du piano des chocolats et à droite j'avais des cerises. J'ai mettais sur le pupitre un roman qui m'a été défendu.
But he launched his career long before sound recording technology became widespread. So there are plenty of stories told by him and by others about his not very diligent attitude regarding technical quality.
Then, at that Paris gala, I played the left hand, the theme was there, the same fire was there, but here, not one right note. There was not one single thing which was really there. Look. I had a tremendous success.
But from the recordings made in 1910 and 1920s, 30s, I can't say that his technique was bad. Yes, you can hear some occasional wrong notes maybe, that would happen to the vast majority of concert pianists, but overall, it's a good quality with brilliant articulation and peerless sound. According to John Rubinstein, Arthur Rubinstein felt that he was, quote, getting away with murder in terms of his playing, so during the summer 1934, he started practicing 8 to 10 hours a day, which was a turning point in his professional career. He said his wife inspired him to do this, and in John's opinion, it was caused by his family feelings and a proud desire to maintain the high reputation of the Rubenstein family name. However, some people say it's because he has listened to young Vladimir Horowitz, who demonstrated marvels of virtuosity. And I have video about Vladimir Horowitz's technique and my analysis of it, which many people agree with, but many people furiously disagree. So if you want to look at something controversial, check out that video. So in my opinion, after listening to those early recordings, we shouldn't fall into the extreme of assuming that his technique was so sloppy and bad, and that he improved incredibly over just one summer of 1934, when he was already 47 years old actually. My point is that although he could be careless and not very diligent in preparing for some concerts, or maybe even many concerts, who knows, especially in his younger years. But he did have a great technique to begin with. Furthermore, from what I see in his video recordings, especially his later recordings, his technique was super efficient and highly sustainable, despite the risk-taking attitude and approach, which I will explain a bit later. His fingers weren't as phenomenally quick as of Martha Argerich, for example. And there is another video about Martha Argerich's technique, which you can check out next. But thanks to the efficient approach he had, he could play pretty well even in his late years, despite age-related limited finger dexterity capacity. In this video, we see an exemplary usage of in and out motions for the circled arpeggios. So when you have patterns like these, the most comfortable and efficient way to play them is to play the shorter fingers, 1 and 5, on a rather pull-in motion, and longer fingers, 2, 3, 4, on a motion forward in the keyboard. So you play out and out. This motion allows you to approach the thumb note from above. So you can comfortably land on it, not using just the thumb, but rather using the weight of the forearm. And on the way back, you would stay low. So then you get this kind of like a circled motion. This is something that many piano students struggle with, trying to use the thumb like this on its own, which creates a lot of tension and doesn't really feel that comfortable. Look how efficiently he uses forearm weight to provide a strong sound, but at the same time he releases the tension right after the hit. We do this both for efficiency, to avoid building up static tension in the arms, and for cushioning the hit, so you get a powerful but noble, not very percussive sound. This is exactly how I personally would play or teach this spot. Fingers 4 and 5 are played in contrary motion, so you would play the 4th finger out and the 5th finger in. This is a very general concept that you can apply like almost everywhere. When you have a weak combination 4-5, fingers 4-5, you can just play them on contrary motions like and then it will be very, very easy, and you would not need to use your fingers so much. You would just use a contrary motion for these two notes. So if you coordinate your motions this way, even such an uncomfortable spot will feel very comfortable. One skill that is drastically important if you want to play the piano well is the way you change positions, how you transfer your arms from position to position, because many people are very concentrated on their fingers and they forget about the role of the forearm and arm when they play piano. So what Rubenstein does here is an absolutely great lesson for everyone. He plays the last note of each hand position on the upward forearm motion. So while his fingers still go down, his forearm already goes up, so he can land on the next hand position from above. And this is a simultaneous motion. Fingers go down and the forearm goes up. And if you succeed in implementing this habit and understanding the principle, then even wide leaps and big distances on a keyboard wouldn't be so stressful for you. For example, yeah, so it's easy to leap if you coordinate your motions properly. Another skill I constantly have to remind my students about is to always reach the bottom of the key and ground yourself properly when finishing a passage. And this is exactly what you can see here in Rubinstein's playing, because very often you can see performances like this, when people jump off the last key as if it were very hot and dangerous. So instead, always practice by supporting yourself properly at that key and then just relaxing the fingers like this and not pulling up your hands too quickly. Also because it's absolutely okay to take some time after such a passage before you proceed to the next phrase. One tip that, in my opinion, is worth $1 million and can be absolute game changer is a joint work of the forearm and the fingers. Quite many piano teachers would require their students to play such spots solely with the fingers, with a quite rigid forearm, so it would look like something like that. And this might be quite dangerous because it leads to a huge amount of tension in the forearm and potential health issues. So what we can see here in Rubinstein's playing, that he uses a lot his forearm for single hit, for every single hit. And this is something that I call myself so-called elbow micro impulses, where you start the sound not in the finger, when you use just a finger with a rigid forearm, but when you would actually feel that the motion originates not in the finger, but in the elbow. And the finger would just stabilize itself at the moment of the hit. So you see that the motion originates in the elbow. So then you can practice slowly like that, providing an equal impulse for each note. Just feeling that the motion always starts in the elbow. And of course, this technique has its limitation. You can't play extremely fast passages with it. But it works for everything that is moderately fast. So even this passage, which is much faster, you can make very pearly and very efficient by providing individual micro impulses from the elbow, and in addition just strengthening the tips of your fingers. And of course, when you play that quickly, they will be so minimized that they will be barely seen. But I feel a huge difference when I play like this, or when I play solely with the fingers with a rigid forearm. It's just very important to relax, to release fingers after each hit properly, instead of lifting them, so that the notes would not overlap. That's the only precautions you have to really make to train yourself to relax the fingers as quickly as you hit the next key. Here we see very efficient octaves with instant relaxation between each octave. I also like that his other fingers are flattened but not tense. This is an amazing habit to have. Now look at his right hand and notice how quickly he releases the chords to release the fingers and approach the next chords in advance. This is a good example of sacrificing physical legato for the sake of efficiency. Instead, he relies on pedal and phrasing rules, playing the second chord slightly softer. This is also a cool trick for those of you who feel that they lack dexterity for their trills. So instead of playing the trills with the same fingers, the way most people do, you can actually try to play them with changing fingers. 1, 3, 2, 3, and so on. So then you could rely on the rotational element in your forearm a little bit more. And it might be, you might accumulate less tension actually and feel yourself more comfortable. In this video we can see how brilliantly Rubenstein uses loose impulses in the wrist for repeating notes, super efficient forearm rotation, and one very important thing about forearm rotation is that you don't want too much of it. So you just have to feel the weight transfer from finger to finger, but staying really close to the keys all the times, like... Here, notice how closely my fingers are to the keys all the times, because this is exactly what allows you to play such spots very efficiently in a faster tempo. Otherwise, you feel there is too much amplitude, so it will be slower and sloppy. Same applies for any other spot, so when you have something like that, make sure to feel how the weight of the hand palm, how the weight of the forearm follows a finger that plays right now. So when you approach the fourth finger, you have to feel how the weight of the hand palm leans right to the fourth finger, and when you go to the second finger, the weight of the hand also follows that finger. Then these spots will be really comfortable and well articulated. Sometimes people ask me about this recording, is it really necessary to lift your arms so incredibly high? Well, it certainly makes you sound more percussive, if that's your goal. However, I believe that this is done mostly for artistic effect. You know, this is a very easy spot, and it's a quite easy piece for any professional pianist, because it's literally like nothing to do. Even if I would transpose this piece in order to match this weird recording, which for some reason sounds half step higher. It's still not a difficult piece, but in order to make it explosive, you must communicate the sense of ultimate passion and danger.
There is a certain antenna, there is a certain secret thing which goes out, emanates from my emotion, from the feeling. I can hold them with one little note in the air, and they will not breathe because they wait what happens next. Not always does it happen, but when it does happen, it is a great moment of our life.
And here we come to one of the hallmarks of Arthur Rubinstein's style: risk-taking. He was a true artist because he would always take risks on stage to get the highest reward an artist can get: being unforgettable. In a good sense. Unreasonably broad arm motions, stable posture, relaxed shoulders, all this enhances an impression of royal confidence and communicates strength. We, in general, we are less likely to be amazed when we see an artist who plays perfectly but shows bodily signs of insecurity than when we see someone who behaves like a king and tells a great story with their music, even if not playing precisely. Many would say that they even like it when great artists occasionally miss and make mistakes. It makes them look more human and more sympathetic.
I blamed myself for it very much for many years. But I came to the conclusion that that developed something which comes out probably in my music, and perhaps that is the reason why people still like to listen to me. There might be some kind of imagination which was built up by this kind of life.
He's absolutely right to say that this vibrant life and these non-musical impressions helped him to feel his art. And this is actually what most good artists and most good teachers use in order to sound less formal. They try to use imagination, they try to use associative thinking when working on a spot or a piece, because if you think that, yeah, that this is a soft piece, I have to play it softly. And then a little bit of crescendo for the second phrase. Then you might get a decent piano playing, maybe, but Arthur Rubinstein would absolutely right to say that this is a horrible music making, because it's formal. I'm just executing the notes. But in order to make it sound personal, in order to make it more appealing on the emotional level, I would need to appeal to my associative memory, associative thinking, and create a story, and to think maybe even about something very distant from what Debussy tried to express here. Like, for example, something as distant as Homer's Odysseus, and just trying to imagine, trying to feel what Odysseus had to feel when he would look at the deep ocean beneath his boat. Thinking about his family, longing for them, and not knowing whether he would ever succeed in seeing them again, and trying to see his future, which is so obscure, uncertain. And yes, this is something absolutely irrelevant to the idea that Debussy put in this work, but it gives me an ability to play it less formally, in a more personal way, thus having more chances to win people's hearts and appeal to them emotionally. So Arthur Rubinstein was absolutely right to do what nearly every great artist does: fuel his art with his rich life experiences. And God, what a life he had.
See what I mean? I have it there, but how I do it, I really couldn't tell you. That's impossible.
Many things in professional music education are taught by demonstration, when a teacher would just demonstrate to a student a phrasing or a rubato example, expecting that a student would just suddenly pick it up and imitate it very closely. And in my opinion, it works greatly for 2 to 5% of music students. So a small amount of music students are able to closely imitate their teachers or somebody else playing. And some students feel music in such a natural way that they can actually play very expressively themselves without any explanation. And those students are usually referred to as natural talents and especially gifted students and so on. But even if you're not lucky to be among them, it doesn't mean that you're doomed, because everything is a skill, and expressive piano playing is also a skill. So if I would make a humble attempt to translate what Arthur Rubinstein does here and why it works the way it works, I could use something like a more analytical approach. For example, we have a phrase that starts from the highest point. So it should sound like an exclamation. Oh my God, you're so beautiful. Because if you say, oh my God, you're so beautiful, nobody's gonna believe you, right? It doesn't work. You need emotion. You need to space those initial two notes and to play them in a more bright, vibrant way. So we take more time for the initial two notes. And then in order to shape this phrase properly, we would chunk it. We would see how it is constructed. So the first element is our exclamation, our excitement. The second element is just 3 notes. And we basically sing around G flat here. And when we have such a situation like, or even. So in any of these situations, when we use any kind of leading tones which guide us to our target note, when we sing around a note, we would always mark those leading tones a little bit more, playing them a little bit louder. And the target note, our resolution note, we would play always a little bit softer. So in this case, F and A flat are a little bit louder, and G flat a little bit softer, or at least not louder than those two. And the next element of this phrase is also a suspension, our leading tone, and its resolution to our target note. So imagine playing something. Same principle with any kind of dominant chord or a seventh chord. You would play it a little bit louder and its resolution softer. It's always a very universal rule which you may apply everywhere in spots like this one. So the same principle. So then this so-called lamento motive, a descending second, would sound very expressively. So at the end we have an excited part, a more careful part, and very delicate part at the end. So then we have already a good start for playing it expressively. Of course, it's not possible to perfectly imitate timing and phrasing of Arthur Rubinstein, but if you understand a principle, you don't need to be Arthur Rubinstein. You can be yourself, and you can express yourself also very expressively and beautifully. And then, of course, additionally, if necessary, we might go into more technical details and learn a particular gesture you might use for any kind of resolutions when you would support yourself in the suspension note, in a stronger note, getting to the key level with your wrist and putting more weight into that note and playing the second note while going up with your forearm and delicately stepping on that resolution note, going through the key very slowly in order to make sure that the resolution note sounds softer. And of course we would control that our shoulders are relaxed and our arms feel like ropes, and that our left hand is very relaxed and there is no tension when we switch from position to position, and that we would transfer the weight of the arm from finger to finger, exactly as we discussed before, diving through each key with the same amount of weight. And not being afraid to take a little bit of extra time after the bass if necessary, in order to avoid haste, because any haste and accents would of course destroy this character. So then it might already sound expressive enough. And yes, there are many steps, and it might take me even like 20 minutes with a student to work on that particular phrase. But the very important message that I want to give you here, which might give some hope to some of you and reassure some of you, that even if you don't feel how to express yourself naturally, and even if you have people who would say you like, you don't have a natural talent, you will never make it, you will never succeed, before sliding down into depression or losing faith in yourself or quitting piano, just send them to hell and find someone who can explain things well, because in my experience, great piano players and great teachers are not always the same people. It might be less relevant for hobbyists and amateur piano players, but one of the most important lessons for professional musicians, which we can learn from Arthur Rubinstein, is that no matter how much you love music, life is bigger than music.
I do continue to be interested in everything happening around me.
Because when you play piano seriously from a very early age, when you're getting used on sacrificing anything else in your life in order to get good enough to start performing career, it's very easy to forget that your life should not obviously be shrinked to this role of being a playing mannequin, that you as a human being is much more than that. And there are so many beautiful and exciting things to explore in this life, and so many skills that you might need to build in addition to your piano playing skills if you want to succeed and enjoy a successful career and a fulfilled life. Thank you for watching this. And if you are interested in my in-depth piano courses, please check them out following the link in the description. Have fun playing piano and see you next time.